رب أعوذ بك من همزات الشياطين وأعوذ بك رب أن يحضرون. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Usury prohibited. All you believe, you should not take usury, compile it over and over. Observe God, that you may succeed. Beware of the hellfire that waits the disbelievers. You shall obey God and the messenger, that you may attain mercy. I can wait there if someone wants to make a comment or something.
Just keep going to 36.
Okay. Attributes of the righteous. You should eagerly race towards forgiveness from your Lord and paradise, whose width encompasses the heavens and the earth. It awaits the righteous, who give to charity during the good times as well as the bad times. They are suppressors of anger and pardoners of the people. God loves the charitable. If they fall in sin or wrong their souls, they remember God and ask forgiveness for their sins, and who forgives the sins except God. And they do not persist in sins knowingly. Their recompense is forgiveness from their Lord and gardens with flowing streams. They abide therein forever. What a blessed reward for the workers. Thank you.
And you want to read the footnote?
Where is it? Oh, there. Perfect. The footnote says interest bank deposits and interest charged on loans are loanable if they are not excessive, like from 5 to 15%. Banks invest in the profits are passed on to the depositors. Since all parties are happy and no one is victimized, it is perfectly lawful to take interest from the bank. See Surah 2 to 275 if you want to see more.
Bassem, any comments or questions about the verses you read?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff here, but I can leave it. I'll leave it a little bit, and maybe someone else wants to comment, inshallah. Maybe even you.
We had this conversation, I think, just a few days ago regarding the distinction between interest and usury. It's funny, if you look at the quote-unquote like Islamic systems, they consider usury and interest as one and the same. You see that most of our economies are in a shamble. I think a good example of this is in Turkey. I think the last month they had like 70% inflation, and a big attribute to this is Erdogan is against charging any interest on loans. So when you have access to free capital, what ends up happening is that you end up victimizing all the people who are forced to hold that currency. And there's a distinction from interest to usury, because usury is you're exploiting someone's situation. Interest, as long as, again, it specifies in the footnote, no being exploited or victimized, everyone's happy, then there isn't a sin in that, say.
Yeah, comment on the attributes of the righteous, 3:133. That's where it starts. So, basically, it talks about how the righteous behave. They give to the charity during the good times as well as the bad times. They suppress their anger and they pardon the people. If they fall in sin or wrong their souls, they remember God and ask for their forgiveness. Do not persist in sins knowingly. These are major attributes of the righteous, and God willing, we can encompass these. But I believe none can encompass these except the extremely fortunate. To be able to comprehend this and accept this is a major success, because we do commit sins many times knowingly, but we shouldn't do that. And we do get angry, and God willing, we can suppress our anger. So these are things that we need to improve on. And God is identifying the difficult things here, but these are what are the true attributes of the righteous. Yeah.
To add to that, I think B133, it says, you shall eagerly race towards forgiveness from your Lord. Paradise whose width encompasses the heavens and the earth, waits the righteous. And then in C7:21, it says, therefore you shall race towards forgiveness from your Lord, and a paradise whose width encompasses the heavens and the earth. It awaits those who believe in God and his messengers, which is God's grace that he bestows upon whomever he wills, as possessor of infinite grace. Makes me think, like, are we as eager when there's an opportunity for righteousness as we are when there's an opportunity for, fun and entertainment? When people are saying, hey, we're getting together because we're going to have a party and you're like jazzed to go. Or it's like, hey, we're getting together to raise money for, a cause. We should be just as eager, if not more so, for the aim of righteousness as we are for these worldly stuff. The example in verse 62 regarding the Friday prayer, when it says, here, let me pull it up. So in source 62, verse 9 through 11, let me put it in. O you believe when the congregational prayer Salat al-Jumu'ah is announced on Friday, hasten to the commemoration of God and drop all business. This is better for you if you only knew. Once the prayer is completed, you may spread through the land to seek God's bounties. Continue to remember God frequently, that you may succeed. Some of them come across a business deal or some entertainment, they rush to it, leave you standing. Say, what God possesses is far better. The entertainment or the business, God is the best provider. And this is just a way for us to gauge if our priorities are aligned. We get excited about times when we can commemorate God or draw closer to God, just as excited as we are, to go watch a movie or, some sort of other form of entertainment.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon all of mashallah. I like to share a little bit on that to add on to what's just said beautifully. I wanted to just emphasize on the mid part of verse 134. They are suppressors of anger and partners of people. That is a quality where, as one grows their soul, they really fall into this quite easily and well. Because one of the qualities is you suppress your anger, that means the stem of peace is growing, and the peace is flowing within you, and anger is being pushed out. And then when that begins to occupy for most of your life and most of your body, per se, then there is no room for that anger. And then when you do get anger or become angry, you immediately realize, and God will show us you. And if that instant, you're angry at the situation, you will pardon the situation. You will move on. And what does that do? Physically and psychologically. Psychologically, from the soul-wise, it's growing the soul. Physically, you really benefit from it. When you don't pardon and move on from an anger, that body is going to deteriorate and build up. Right? That negativity is just going to become a very deep, dark feeling. But when you pardon and forgive, because you're connected to the source, and God is the source of forgiveness, then you really become lighter, and your mind and your will is free. I wanted to share that. God bless.
What is the difference between in Surah 3, verse 135, when it said, if they fall in sin or wrong their souls? What's the difference between falling in sin and wronging your soul?
Something just comes to mind, I gotta think more about it, it's a good question, is the same expression is used when Adam duped Satan. So sometimes, okay, so let's put it this way, if I have to make a distinction between those two. Sometimes we lose our cool unintentionally. Okay, so it's like something happens, it triggers us, the heat of the moment, we basically lose our cool. See that in the sense of kind of like slipping. Then when you wrong your souls, like let's say someone did you wrong, right? You have this moment, this gap, You have a choice in the sense of how you're going to respond. In one response, you can basically be cool, collected. You make an active choice to go and basically, be belligerent, angry, basically unsubmitting. I think that's the distinction, is that, one of them is kind of you're duped into it. The other one is an active decision in the sense of knowing the right path and the wrong path, in essence, despite knowing what it is and not having the will to make the right decision. Regarding Taslim's comment, is it this verse 43:87, right? It says such as it says when angered they forgive. That was this verse. 42:37. Sorry, off by. They avoid gross sins and vice, and when angered, they forgive. What's interesting is usually in the Quran, when God gives these decrees to respond, the best possible response, or to ignore the ignorant, it tells us immediately after you seek refuge in God from Satan. Because it's at those times when Satan's going to get the best of us, right? It's at those times that Satan's going to whisper, and his whisper is going to have the highest probability of swaying us. And if you look, so say for instance, this is right before, so 41:36. That's another set of verses. Seeing this one.
I think it's rather 42:20 something. The additional traits of the righteous.
Yeah, but usually that's the thing, when God tells us to do this, immediately it basically tells us to seek refuge in God. And, my takeaway from that is that, again, it's like these are just the times when it's the easiest, we're the most vulnerable. When someone does us wrong and God is telling us, in essence, to take the higher ground. It's at those times when Satan's going to try to pull us away and then cause us to slip. Yeah, I think I was mixing it up with
36.
Yeah. So it's like 41 from 33 through 37.
Yeah, mashallah.
Put it in the chat for anyone who's interested. This is who can utter better words than one who invites to God, works righteousness, and says, I am one of the submitters. Not equal is the good response and the bad response. You shall resort to the nicest possible response. Thus, the one who used to be your enemy may become your best friend. None can attain this except those who steadfastly persevere. None can attain this except those who are extremely fortunate. Then it says, when the devil whispers an idea to you, you shall seek refuge in God, to hear the omniscient. For those who are joined, we read Surah 3, verse 130 through 136. Anyone wants to add any comments or questions?
I just was going to comment if Sister Jannah mentioned that her mother is currently being victimized by usury. Do you want to come up and elaborate? Maybe some people don't know what usury is, and explain to us kind of in general details what the situation is. All right, looks like she's busy. So I think usury is a combination of, high interest and also this concept of, charging someone high interest and also taking advantage of someone. So it's kind of exploitation. So as submitters, we should never do that. We should never take advantage of anyone. We should never exploit anyone. So I think this is something to strongly consider. And here in the verses, we read that we should not take usury, compounded over and over, and it's the taking of usury that is important.
The takeaway I have is that you're not taking advantage of someone's situation. If I'm holding money for someone, and it takes time and energy and effort and security and all this other stuff to retain that money, and it makes sense that I charge for that service. You can call it a commission, you can call it a monthly fee. At the end of the day, there's a way that someone has to charge for that. Interest is just one of these methodologies. But if I'm taking advantage of someone's situation and I'm really like exploiting them in that transaction, even if it's 1%, in my opinion, I think that's becomes to the realm of usury, where you're just exploiting someone's situation to get the upper hand.
By the way, I have a question regarding the interest. For example, I can take interest from the bank, right? If I have money on the bank, right, I can take like, I don't know, 5%, for example, here in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Is it not?
Yeah, it's in the footnote elaborates on that as well. It says bank invest their profits and passes to depositors. All parties are happy and no one is victimized. It's perfectly lawful to take interest from the bank. I don't know if it's 5% in Germany. The States, you get like 0.025%.
Oh, okay. you made a point. You made a point with Turkey and Erdogan. I mean, I'm not really into politics, but I'm actually from Turkey, but I live in Germany. Can you maybe repeat that?
So, basically all developed countries, they have a central bank. Now, we can argue if it's chronically permissible or not, but irrespective, they have a central bank. Central bank sets the interest rates for basically getting cash. And so in Turkey, Erdogan believes that any form of interest is prohibited. They keep the interest rates near zero. But what ends up happening is people take this insane amount of capital out from their central bank. They flood the market with cheap capital. It's the reason that, I don't know what it is this month, but I think like last month I saw a headline that was like 70% interest rates, 70% inflation month over month in Turkey. That means that if you literally just held the Turkish, it's the lira, if I'm not mistaken, you would have lost 70% of your purchase power. Meaning, like if you had $1,000 in the bank, the next month you could basically buy the equivalent of $300 worth of a product. And you compound that, month over month. Basically, you're just completely decimating a person's livelihood when you do that. And this is just because of this mistaken understanding that all forms of interest are prohibited. Because the people you end up victimizing the most are the ones who, in essence, don't have access to that capital.
Okay, got it. Thank you. God bless you.
All right. So, do we have a volunteer to read the next set of verses? I can load them up here. 3:137. Let's see. 3:137. Okay. I got it here. Do we have a volunteer? Does someone want to read? Do you want me to read? If
137 to where?
To 144. I put in VC1-chat.
Okay, I'll read.
Go for it.
Victory for the righteous. Presidents have been set for you in the past. Know the way and note the consequences for the unbelievers. This is a proclamation for the people and a guidance and enlightenment for the righteous. You shall not waver, nor shall you grieve, for you are the ultimate victors, if you are believers. If you suffer hardship, the enemy also suffers the same hardship. We alternate the days of victory and defeat among the people. God thus distinguishes the true believers and blesses some of you with martyrdom. God dislikes injustice. God thus toughens those who believe and humiliates the disbelievers. All claims must be tested. Do you expect to enter paradise without God distinguishing those among you who strive, and without distinguishing those who are steadfast? You used to long for death before you had to face it. Now you have faced it right before your eyes. Muhammad was no more than a messenger like the messengers before him. Should you die or get killed, will you turn back on your heels? Anyone who turns back on his heels does not know God in the least. God rewards those who are appreciative.
Nathaniel, have you got any comments or questions about the verses? There's a word that's used in 3:141. Is it God thus toughens those who believe and humiliates the disbelievers? This word that's translated as toughens. It occurs in this verse. It occurs, we'll read it 10 verses ahead in 3:154. And it comes from the same meaning of like refining metals or, essence where you're ready of impurities. And the way that that's done, if you think about it, it's like if you have a metal and you want to refine it, you have to increase the temperature. And the impurities burn off, and what's left is the pure substance. And it's the same mechanism for us. When we were presented, like the human was presented to the angels, and Satan objected, his claim was that he's made from fire and we're made from clay. Irony is that when you place clay inside fire, it burns off the impurities and it strengthens the clay. For us, it's the same thing. Like God puts us in these tough situations. In this case, going to war, having to fight, to risk life and limb. But these situations are the situations by which we become strengthened. And, there's that temptation in essence to just be like, oh, let me just get in my room and commemorate and think about God and meditate, which is it's fine. But there is this element where unless we put ourselves in those situations, God is going to put us in those situations that we actually rise to the occasion, that we take these lessons that we're learning from the Quran, actually are able to apply it to real life.
MashaAllah. I have a question. Verse 35 that we spoke of a little earlier, the last part is, and they do not persist in sins knowingly. My question is, if one has a weakness, and because of their weakness, they keep repeating it, how does that fall into play with persisting? In other words, there's a weakness, and you keep repeating it, and it becomes persistent. God here says they do not persist in sins knowingly. I want to know if anyone can elaborate on that. How does that fall into play for a submitter, where all of a sudden they're persisting, but that's part of their weakness in their quality? Or can I view it that way? Or maybe you can elaborate if you don't mind. Thanks.
The thing that comes to mind is that human beings, we hate dissonance, meaning that if we believe one thing but we're doing something else, that really eats away at a person. They don't like to be inconsistent in the sense of how they perceive themselves and what their reality is. So I tell myself, hey, I believe in getting up early, being productive, but every morning I get up late and I'm just like doing nothing productive. For a while, I kind of just remove that requirement because I don't like the fact of not living up to my expectations. See, the challenge in persisting in sins knowingly is that if someone knows, for instance, that they're doing something that they shouldn't be, over time they're going to start justifying that, oh, it's not that bad, it's not a big deal, and to the point of downplaying the sinfulness of the act. And this is one of the byproducts of persisting in sins knowingly. If you think about it, what's worse? Someone who's a weak believer, who knows what they're doing is wrong, but in essence doesn't have the willpower yet to correct that action, or someone who convinces themselves that their sinful behavior isn't a big deal. I think the slippery slope of this is that if we're persisting in sin knowingly, eventually the gravity of the sin gets diminished. It seems like, it's not a big deal. It's fine. And after a while, someone might even justify that their sinful behavior is righteous. Imagine someone who, this is kind of extreme, but they slack off at work. And they say it's not a big deal. There's 1,000 people working here. What if I'm, slacking off? Then they start, not showing up to work. Then they start, taking stuff from work. And eventually they get to a point where you ask them, hey, you're doing all this sinful stuff. They'll say, well, look, this corporation, it's worth billions of dollars. They don't pay me enough. And you start creating this justification for your bad behavior, your lack of integrity. And I just see this as a aspect of, if we go down that path knowingly, over time, we're just going to paper over or become blind to the obviousness of the bad behavior.
I think maybe I can add something to that point you made. I think there is a major difference, and if you commit a sin, and if you say, okay, I made that sin, right, and it is wrong, and you try your best to come out of this way. And there's also a part of people who blame their sins because of other people, right? They're like, okay, I made that sin because of that, or because of him, her, right? But I think there's a difference between a person, a submitter, who knows that what he has done was actually a sin. He tries his or her best to, solve this. And there are also people who blame everything on others or on anything. They just don't want to see their own mistakes, right? I think that's, committing sins knowingly. To, justify that by, how can I explain? Maybe, for example, there are some people who say, like, okay, did that sin. It's not a big deal because many people do, for example. They lie to themselves to justify their actions. I think that's, committing sins knowingly.
Thank you for that sharing. My follow-up to that question is, can that, for a submitter, because that's what I really want to focus on myself, can that lead to a doom where one becomes or falls into becoming a hypocrite? Can that transform from, a submitter that begins to hover into that mode, and then they don't realize it, and they keep insisting it, and now they're falling into hypocrisy? Do you guys see it that way?
I'd say not only that, it really corrodes our moral compass. We spend so much time trying to be able to distinguish right from wrong. If we're actively persisting in sins knowingly, you can't expect that your moral compass is going to be as sharp. I think to the examples I was given, it's like, if you're surrounded by people who are just, let's say, incredibly sinful, then even though if you're not to their caliber, justify your sinful behavior. It's like, imagine, being in prison and looking around and be like, wow, these guys are terrible. And this guy, killed someone. This one is a pedo. This one, raped someone. All I do is just steal cars. Like, what's the big deal? It's like if your frame of reference is skewed, and in essence, all of a sudden, even though you're still conducting bad behavior, you're not going to see it to the seriousness of how God sees it.
Thank you.
All right, so
I'm going to make a comment on another subject. Yeah, peace be upon you all.
Peace be upon you. Go ahead, brother.
It's gonna the verse we read back, but I thought it's important to make a comment on 3:130 about usury, right? So I think Rosh and everybody talked pretty well on that subject. I think we get it. We should not ever be in a position to charge usury. But the definition, I think, is very well, the way Rashad explained it about victimization, which is obviously makes sense. I think one thing we don't talk enough about, and I see people become victim to it, is the other side. So not us charging, the recipients of the usury. But also, they also play a role. For example, in modern society, in today's world, people have a choice, right? And for example, God tells us, that you should not live an extravagant life. You should live within our means, obviously, right? So nowadays, for example, if you want to buy something and you crave it, so you just decide to, maybe put it on a very high interest rate credit card. I know some of the credit cards, like in Citibank, they offer it goes up to 30%, right? Which is really ridiculous. So there's also a test for us not to fall victim, and we should live by our means, right? So these booby traps exist, right? And if you have a limited means of living and you want this fancy car or you want this fancy couch or fancy whatever clothes, they say, oh, don't worry, I'm going to charge it for my credit card. And I see this, that's the kind of business I'm in. I see these people, putting themselves in very harm's way where they really don't need that. So it kind of reminds me of that, the tree in paradise, how Satan duped Adam in tasting it. So we also play a role, I think, in it as well. So bad things are around us, but I think we need to learn as a marriage or as a community not to indulge ourselves beyond our means. And that's one of the biggest problems that we see. People should, if you have money, you can afford it, you should do that. If not, you're adding to this situation. So all these high interest rate credit cards are there because people are falling victim to them, right? So even though you may not need that, the extra pair of whatever, or extra clothes, or extra this, but it's just so much easier just, put on your credit card. So I just want to say that that's one side of it, but we also, as consumers, play a role in this. Thank you.
Regarding that, on an audio tape, Dr. Kuka said, I told him to tear it up. You get the credit card, you get your checking account, you get that credit card, tear it up. That's what he said.
Well, credit card, if you think about it, I use it all the time. Obviously, in this day and age, cash is not a easy way to spend money and get a account. If you pay it up at the end of the month and you're responsible, it's great, right? It's a great tool. But bottom line is, using credit card to keep balance, that means you're living beyond your means. Very simple. If you have a credit card, let's God forbid, I don't want to talk about everyone. You're in a sudden financial situation, that's understandable, and may God help all of us or everyone and help whatever it is. I'm talking about a normal circumstance. If you keep your balance or your credit card and you live an okay life and everybody just want to have, you become, spending beyond your means, well, we become falling victims to Satan, So I think that's maybe if that's common in it, I think that's where it's coming from, right? Live out your means. Use a debit card, for example. Don't use a credit card. Use a debit card where the actual cash is coming out of your checking or savings. And don't beyond that. And a lot of people are falling victim of that. This is it's a huge business, by the way. It's a $1 trillion business that's happening. Peace.
And add something to that. It's in the developing countries, they have this microfinance. And I think, Shahida, did you want to make a comment?
Sister Shahida, did you want to say something?
I'm sorry. During the peaceful. I know. Somehow it got unmuted. Was it unmuted like that?
Just now.
Ignore it, please. Thank you.
You can mute yourself and then unmute whenever you like. Thank you. All right. Go ahead,
I was
please.
going to make a comment regarding the microfinance. So, it started as a very noble cause, and the thing is, it ended up causing a lot of grief. People were committing suicide and just really destroying their lives because they were asking for these small loans, right? You're talking about like $20, $40, $100, $1,000. And people were getting it, not realizing that they had to pay it back, and then when they would have to pay it back, it has severe interest associated with it. And you think about the person who needs a $20 loan. This person doesn't need a loan; they need charity. I think that when we try to, the aspect is it's noble. They said, look, we're going to have this system, but we tolerate defaults. If you can't pay, it's fine. And you operate it in the form of a charity. I see this working. So then people who could, let's say, hey, they needed $20 because they have and it's really beautiful, the cases that work out well. Who wants to basically increase their business and they just need this small loan to be able to get the inventory or the materials they need. They return that money back with gains for themselves. The concept is when you have a fixed interest rate with it, where someone can't wiggle out of it. You have people, they get money because they want to throw a birthday party, and look, this is not an economic endeavor that's going to pay back, and then they end up getting in debt, and they basically are stuck there. I think it's worth distinguishing who are these people who need charity, taking a loan. Those two, or if you do give the loan, you're fully aware that don't expect the money back because the person might not be able to pay because of their circumstances. But it's funny. I saw the event wasn't on, but I saw that the announcement was there, so I was confused. Did want to make one other comment. This is probably like one of the a very explicit verse in the Quran against people who they commemorate the prophet and they exalt him to a position where God is telling us don't do that. 3:144 it says Muhammad was no more than a messenger like the messengers before him. If you consult most traditionalists, they'll tell you no, Muhammad was the best of all the prophets. He was the best of all the messengers. All the messengers marveled at his glory. And they elevate him, and by doing so, they're confirming their idol worship tendencies, and also breaking a very severe commandment in the Quran not to make distinction among God's messengers by elevating some at the expense of others.
With regards to verse 137, when it says, President has been set for you in the past. Rule the earth and note the consequences for the unbelievers. I feel like my interpretation of this verse may not be up to par because I'm thinking that if you rule the earth and you actually see how certain unbelievers live, at least on the surface, they seem to live quite well. So, could someone explain this to me a bit better, please?
Yeah, so looking for a specific verse, I just read it. I want to say, no, basically, okay, here it is, 1445. So this one verse that comes to mind says, "You dwelled in the homes of those before you who wronged their souls. You have seen clearly what they did to them. We have set many precedents for you. That look." You're living in a home, chances are, generation ago, there was someone else who's living there. Where are they now, right? No longer with us, meaning that we have this finite amount of time on this planet, basically be redeemed back into God's kingdom. In Surah, I want to say, is it 6:6? So in Surah 6, verse 6, it's saying, have they not seen how many generations before them we have annihilated, established them on earth more than we did for you? We showered them with blessings generously, provided them with flowing streams. then annihilated them because of their sins, and we substitute another generation in their place. Meaning that, you think about the generations of the past. These people were blessed with, vast material wealth, luxuries, comforts, all this stuff. Again, they're no longer with us. Their timeline on this planet is finite. And all that luxury, all that wealth, where is it with them now? It's still sitting here on Earth. I think that's the frame of reference that when I read 137, I contemplate, is that these are, in essence, people. They're here for a short amount of time, accrue, let's say all this money, they have it sitting in a bank account. When they leave this world, they don't take any of this with them.
I would also add 17:18. I would like to show James as well. Anyone who chooses this fleeting life as his priority, we will rush to him what we decide to give him. So there you have it. That's what you're seeing. People are doing really well. They're disbelievers, but God is rushing to them what he's decided to give them. And, this is also a blessing, and this is the engine of economy. People spending things, they buy stuff. This stuff, everything wears out. Everything deteriorates. That provides jobs, stuff for people to do. They got the money, they're spending it. That just increases the economic activity.
Does anyone else have any comments or questions about the verses we read? We read from 3:130 through 144.
Yeah, I had a comment on 138, 139. So it says, this is a proclamation for the people and a guidance and enlightenment for the righteous. You shall not waver, nor shall you grieve, for you are the ultimate victors if you are believers. So, and then this one and also the next verse, it talks about how we really shouldn't be discouraged and we should just go at full strength and not get disappointed or weakened by events occurring. We just need to be strong. So we shall not waver. We can't grieve. We are the ultimate victor. So really, the way I see it for the believers, the true believers, there's only two outcomes. There's two possibilities. There's victory or martyrdom. Both are fantastic outcomes. So that's really what it comes down to, because the believers are guaranteed victory. Yeah, that was my comment.
Hello, everyone. Oops, sorry, dude. Okay, I have a question. Verse 140, chapter 3, verse 140. If you suffer hardship, the enemy also suffers the same hardship. We alternate the days of victory and defeat among the people. God thus distinguishes the true believers and blesses some of you with martyrdom. God dislikes injustice. Do you see this verse applying specifically to the time of war, or does this apply at all times, presently, right now? In other words, if we're going through hardship or difficulties, whatever that may be, the others will be going through that as well. How do you see this verse?
Yeah, I think.
Oh, God. Good, Navi.
I was just going to say, I think this is a general concept that we experience, kind of like what I was talking about earlier. It's like, look, 140 says, if you suffer hardship, the enemy also suffers hardship. We alternate the days of victory and defeat among the people. God thus distinguishes the true believers and blesses some of you with martyrdom. So it's just talking about the various circumstances that occur, and it's basically saying what it says in the previous verse: do not waver, do not grieve. You're the ultimate victories. So you see ups and downs, different circumstances play out in front of you. Forget about all that. Just focus on the fact that you will be the ultimate victory. You are the ultimate victor. Victory is guaranteed for the believers.
I had to apply this to say today, right? There's these culture wars that are going on. They're in essence, you have people pushing these very hedonistic, anti-godly narrative in schools, in work, in music, entertainment, and every so often you feel like you're in the defeat, and God, in essence, allows us to taste minor victory. What this verse is informing me, at least my takeaway from it, is we think that in essence they're gaining ground. You have to realize that on their end they're suffering as well, and that God is telling you, these setbacks are for your own good. That this is the mechanism by which God toughens us. He reinforces our faith, and if we're steadfast, then by God's lead we'll be victorious. It reminds me of this verse. It says, they do not get together to fight you unless they're in well-shielded buildings or behind walls. It says their might appears formidable among themselves. They think they are united when in fact their hearts are divided. This is because their people do not understand.
MashaAllah. Thank you for that. I believe that as well. I think what we experience in life throughout our day, work, family, or any situation, and when we go through that grinder, I know that they are going to go through that grinder as well. The key difference for me and us as submitters and shadows is that we just have to steadfastly persevere, trust in God, and know there's a reason for everything. And by the virtue of us being steadfast, I'm demonstrating to myself the degree of the growth of my soul, inshallah. Thank you.
All right, Sister Shahida has a question. Please come up and ask your question. Thank you.
So just was reading from the beginning, and I just have a question regarding God on 133. With the attributes of the righteous, God saying to forgive, right? You should eagerly raise towards forgiveness from your Lord and paradise with rules that can encompass the heavens and the earth, always the righteous. So is it God advocating here as to forgive? What does it mean to raise towards forgiveness? We should know God's forgiveness, or how do we apply these attributes into our life as well, like forgive and move on? But is the question, I understood the verse, but just a general question: if somebody made mistake and they don't ask you for forgiveness, on that scenario, what do you do? And they're your family member, you have already dealt, but they don't want to come and say, "Oh, we are sorry, we had that all burden you on your shoulder and do that." Ask forgiveness, So everybody say, "Oh, forgive them," but they don't come to ask for forgiveness, right? They don't come and acknowledge there was a mistake, and at that scenario, what you guys should do. Just your insight, inshallah.
MashaAllah. Okay, so
I just want to add up. You guys probably wondering what kind of crime they have done, right? So, based on, I know you guys are my real family. I can share with you guys quickly. Just it's the same incident happened twice. So someone came over and stayed in my house with my in-laws, and the amount of money was taken from my daughter, right? So first time we digested it, we didn't say anything, and then my husband helped them buy a house, so they moved on to their house, and I went to give their money, and that same person, I'm assuming, because I didn't have camera record or anything, I'm assuming, took it again from my purse. So everybody getting on me saying that like I'm thief, I'm making a drama, people with videos. So we have a hard time holding it here. We try to forget the first incident, and then these people came over again this year, and then same incident happened. And I'm like, that person who makes same mistake again and again never learned from my mistake. So now we are in a situation like we getting up ourselves, like we can sing, we can. My husband also directed. He was very straightforward, but because it's his family, he can't say anything. Recently he started trying to take a stand, because even though we don't have solid proof, but it leans towards one person who could do it. And now my in-laws, my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law, my stepfather-in-law, they're making a big drama that I set it up to use them or break their relationships, right? Which wasn't my intention. This is like last 13 years, they have been coming and going, never happened this kind of incident unless this new family member came over. So my take here is that my husband is like his sister is coming, which is his own sister, and my father-in-law, which is my husband's stepfather-in-law, father. So now how we mingle with them? He wants to avoid them because they are not coming and saying something, because they are making a big drama, accusing us instead. Like they're saying we stole our own money, especially me. Like she set it up. She didn't even have the money, but she's accusing. She's jealous of our property and our wealth. So what do you do in this kind of situation? We try to stay quiet, and now it's like we both are hurting, and it's taking a toll on our health. May God help us too. I am a person who likes to forgive and forget and move on, but then my husband is like, he's very rigid, and he's very nice when he's very nice, but when he's harsh, he's harsh. He's like, they cannot blame you for twice, So, if you guys have any inputs, after you guys have any important conversation,
forgive. May God guide us. This is tough. I don't think this is a popular response. It's tough, and may God reward you if you've been victimized, since you have been victimized. But we have to remember who the victim is. Who's the perpetrator? It's Satan. Remember, nothing happens to you. Nothing happens. Nothing bad happens unless we brought it on ourselves. Somehow you're in a test, or somehow you stepped out into God's protection. Either one, it's one of those. However you look at it, we're supposed to trust in God and know that this is from God. He controls the hearts and the minds. He controls the hearts and minds of every single one of your relatives, everybody around you, all of this. Don't think it's something bad that happened to you. Think it's something good that happened to you if you've been victimized. God rewards, he does that. But at the same time, if you are incurring retribution or something, it's so that you recognize, examine yourself deeply. What are we doing wrong? What's going wrong? This kind of thing, so that you can avoid the big retribution of the next life by dealing with the smaller retribution of this life. I think the notion of victim, there's no such thing for an utmost submitter. An utmost submitter accepts everything and knows that it's from God and knows. And so, yes, you have to avoid suspicion and trust in God and know that He controls their minds. You don't control their minds. You don't, do the best you can to protect your money, put it whatever, and know that, somehow, this is from God. I'm sorry.
All right, thank you very much. I agree with Brother Jeff that we submit to God, but then there is also a practical application. For example, in the Quran, I'm not saying to do this, but there are punishments for crimes. If someone commits a sin, if someone commits theft, for example, it says they must repay the amount taken and the marking of the hands takes place. Now that is a separate issue from the fact that it's whoever's test and they submit to God and this kind of thing. Okay. So does anyone have any questions or comments about the verses that we read? 142 talks about how our claims must be tested. This is a less used and cited verse, but it's consistent with many verses in the Quran: 29:2, 2:155, 3:186. Our claims must be tested. It says, do you expect to enter paradise without God distinguishing those among you who strive, and without distinguishing those who are steadfast? So here it is. This is our test. We're deciding to come here and do the Quran study and observe God's commands and study His scripture. We could be doing something else. And that we can strive in many ways. This is just one of them. Does anyone have any questions or comments about the verses read? And at this point, we're actually opening the Quran study to other topics and other verses of the Quran. So it could be about the verses we read or any other issue or verses in the Quran.
MashaAllah. I have a question, not throw it out there. So the Eids, Eid al-Adha, Fitr, all these things, how does submission deal with it, and how is it not seen as universal acceptance?
I would just add is these are, how do you put it, one of the things that we want to make sure we do is we don't infiltrate the religion with culture. If people choose to celebrate certain aspects and stuff, it's one thing, but once it becomes like a religious connotation, in the sense where there's congregational prayers associated with it, sermons associated with it, it's no longer, in essence, becomes just a cultural aspect. And that's the one kind of distinction in the sense of the Eid in general. But the aspect is there's many, Eids that are celebrated. And, not all of them necessarily are even come from a Quranic basis. The ones that, let's say, they do in the sense of a celebration, again, we just want to separate things that we might do on a personal level or a cultural level or a family level from those that are religious obligations. I did want to just one thing else about what we read, this concept of it says used to long for death before you have to face it. Is this obvious natural tendency that is part of every living organism is the avoidance of death. And one of the things as a submitter is that we shouldn't fear death. And God is going to, in the case of the past generations, they were asked to fight in the cause of God, like physically, risk life and limb to do it. And this tendency of fear kicks in. There's this powerful verse in Surah 2, verse 243. It says, "Have you noted those who fled their homes, though they were in the thousands, fearing death. God said to them, die, then revive them. God showers his grace upon the people, but most people are unappreciative. If we fear death, we have to realize God is the one who controls life and death. Someone who's saying, look, I don't want to do it because I'm scared I'm going to die, we'll see in the next set of verses that it says, had they stayed home, those destined to die, had they stayed home, they would have been crawling into their deathbeds. I mean that, again, God is the one who controls life and death. Kind of reminds me, used to go indoor rock climbing, and I brought my kids, and they were up on the rope, and so they take them to the top, and they say, okay, we want you to let go. And there's this tendency where you're harnessed in, your fingers don't want to let go, and but once you do, the rope holds you up, you're fine. It's kind of the same thing. We have these fears that are distinctive that God has placed in us for the sake of our own survival. Our logical part of our brain has to kick in at certain times and say, look, if God is the one who controls provisions, God is the one who controls life and death, God's the one who's controlling everything. If God tells us to do something, we shouldn't fear the people, we shouldn't fear the circumstances. We should put all our trust into God.
All right, a question was asked by Sister Shahida. I apologize. Verses were put 22:33, 22:34. The question about 34 regarding the livestock. It says, for each congregation we have decreed rites whereby they commemorate the name of God for providing them with the livestock. It says, what do you think about verse 34? Does it apply for a whole Muslim world or only the pilgrims?
Brother, so I just want to clarify more. You can write it. My whole family is traditional except my own. So they come with this verse to me in Bengali or other translation, but in the other translation, it seems like mistranslated, not Dr. Khalifa's translation, I think Dr. Khalifa's translation is satanic, so they don't buy anything. So they take this verse and they say this verse proves that the whole humanity should commemorate during the Hajj, while the Hajis are commemorating Abraham's sacrifice. This should apply for everyone who is not going to the Hajj. As a submitter, thinking about I got a clear understanding of it. It's one of the rites in the Hajj, right? And we should not practice our tradition as our religion, right? It's been passed down. I don't know how many generations doing it wrong, but nobody wants to. So they feel sad for me. Everybody, praise God. I don't have my brothers and sisters. They all live far from me, but still they're like, they call day and night and they say, oh, you are depriving your kids. They're not learning anything. They're missing their hangouts and all this stuff. So praise God, my husband also.
Okay, I cannot hear anything. Can anybody hear her speaking?
They read Quran day and night. They think they understand better. Even with their verse in the Quran is specifically mentioned about the evolution and all these things. This verse is not too clear, but people take it.
Okay. Can anybody hear me? I think we had a connection issue.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, thank God. Thank you. Yeah, I looking at the verses 22, 33, and 34. I don't know if anyone else has any comments on this, but obviously 33 is talking about Hajj and the ancient shrine at the Masjid Haram. And then the next verse is interesting. You know what? It says, for each congregation we have decreed rites whereby they commemorate the name of God for providing them with livestock. I don't know what to say about that other than I think that when you want to kill the animal, you slaughter in the name of God. I think that's a universal thing. I think all religious people, from my understanding, the Jews, Christians, and Muslims do some kind of version of this. And thankfully, if we just slaughter the animal in the name of God, then it's lawful for us to eat. That's good. I mean, obviously, if there's no name, that's acceptable too. We just say Bismillah and we eat it. But if we slaughter in the name of God, even better. Okay, for everyone that joined, we read from chapter 3, verse 130, all the way to 144. 144 is interesting. It talks about Prophet Muhammad. It says, Muhammad was no more than a messenger like the messengers before him. Should he die or get killed, would you turn back on his heels? Anyone who turns back on his heels does not hurt God in the least. God rewards those who are appreciative. So 2 points on this verse. First of all, it says that the Prophet Muhammad was no more than a messenger like the messengers before him. So therefore, he's not a superior being. That's point 1. Point 2 is that it's interesting is that there's 4 verses that mentions Muhammad by name. This is one of them. And if you notice, it just says Muhammad was no more than a messenger, and then it goes on. But it does not say peace be upon him after this. So actually, the Muslims are forced to add peace be upon him in the verse. But the concept is, if God wanted us to say it every time, God would not have a Quran where it's not included when we are reading the Quran. If I give this Quran in Arabic to somebody and they just read it, they're going to say Muhammad's name without saying peace be upon him. This is further proof that it's not a requirement to say peace be upon him when you recite the name of the Prophet.
MashaAllah, Brother Naveed. You said exactly what I wanted to say. God bless you. And when we say peace, to add on to your good statement, when we say peace be upon to any person, that person must be living alive, right? I mean, you want them to be in a state of peace. That means they're alive. Where deceased, in this case, Prophet Muhammad is in heaven, he's no longer here. He doesn't have a body, so it doesn't apply. And that's part of the innovation and to, distinguishing a prophet over another or honoring him. Where God here clearly says Muhammad, Abraham, Jonah, David, all of them. Thank you.
Well, I would add that God can do it, and God does it. We have multiple verses where God says, peace be upon various peoples, and they're not alive currently. So God can do that if he wants to. And we have several verses. I put 5 verses in this regard. Yeah. I think there's another aspect also. If I say peace be upon a particular messenger, and I don't say it for the other messengers, I'm making active distinction among the messengers, and this is a violation of God's law.
I'd like to bring up another point. We just entered the sacred months. It says, so this is kind of a joke, but I'm just kind of pushing on a narrative that I've made before about conflating fighting with intense argument. 217. They ask you about the sacred months and fighting therein. Fighting therein is a sacrilege. So it's a sacrilege. So here's my joke. So for the next 4 months, for you guys who see fighting as argumentation, I'll pick up the slack for you because I don't see it as fighting. I'll do the argumenting for you. That's my joke.
Jokes aside, I have a question about that. So, maybe the fighting it's talking about here is definitely not oral argumentation. But I need to check into this where, if anyone can help in this regard, where the messenger of covenant explains, and I'm not saying this with absolute certainty, I need to verify this for myself, but I remember something along the lines of, in today's times, we don't fight with swords, we fight with our tongues. I don't know if anyone remembers that. It can help me find a citation for that. I'd really appreciate it.
No, it's all mental, he says. It's logical. The fight is internal. It's inside your own mind. Because it's persuasion. It's between you and your own jinn. That's how I see it. It's inside you. It's all mental. It's in you. Not trying to force them to see it. We just remind. But the fight is internal. That's how I see it.
All right. Anyone have any questions or comments about the verses we read, or any other Quranic topic that may have come up during the past week? We have the weekly Quran studies here every Sunday.
I just thought that maybe that would open up just the notion of the sacred months. I mean, we literally just began the sacred months. So it's for 4 months we have sacred months. What does that mean to us as submitters? What is that going to do? How is that going to affect our behavior for the next 4 months? How do we think of that? What's the significance? How are we going to monitor us? What is it? How are we going to apply sacred months in that concept as a submitter?
Yeah, I'm not sure, actually. I would think that if we're not engaging in physical fighting, it might not apply to us. So, I don't know.
So I'm new to Islam, and I know about Ramadan, the holy month of Ramadan, but the sacred months I'm not too aware of it. Could you explain like what it's about?
Well, we know that the Hajj just happened, and that's the first month. So Dhul Hijjah is the first month of the next 4 consecutive months of the sacred months. Now, of course, in Sunni Islam, they alternate the sacred months, and so they've got them all confused. But the Quran is very clear on that we are not to alternate the sacred months. Dhul Hijjah just began, so the next 4 months are the sacred months. Of course, the Quran has a lot of verses about fighting therein. It's a sacrilege to fight therein, repelling from the path of God. All of that is prohibited. It's bad during the sacred months. The reason I brought it up is because I haven't heard much conversation about it ever. So I think there's probably a lot of darkness with regards to this.
Yeah, the sacred months are 12, 1, 2, 3 of the Islamic lunar calendar. So the 12th month, the first month, the second month, and the third month, these are the sacred months. And it does, I believe, start with Dhul Hijjah, which is the month of pilgrimage, and that's when it starts. And so there's 4 sacred months. Yeah. I put a verse about that in VC1-chat 937, and brother Mike put some verses about it. I think it's predominantly deals with war and entering treaties and not fighting during the sacred months. But I'm interested in additional aspects of it if anyone has anything to share. While people are looking into that, I just loaded the link in VC1-chat for next week's Quran study. With God willing, we start at 3145. So I'm just putting this in here for now, just so because I have everyone's attention, God willing. But that's in VC1-chat. If you can sign up, tap interested. When you tap interested, you should see the check mark that confirms your interest and reservation for next week's Quran study, the weekly Quran studies, which, by the way, the first hour is the specific verses discussion. Then the second hour, which we are in now, is the open discussion on the verses of the Quran. Okay. Does anyone have any more comments on the months, the sacred months? Does somebody want to talk about the sacred months? Elaborate on that. If not, do we have a new question or comment to discuss?
It's a good question. So what I just see, and I did a search, and I think you mentioned in chapter 9, verse 37, I'll read it for you guys. The subtitle says, altering the sacred months. The verse reads, altering the sacred months is a sign of excessive disbelief. It augments the straying of those who have disbelieved. They alternate the sacred months and the regular months while preserving the number of months consecrated by God. They thus violate what God has consecrated. Their evil works are adorned in their eyes. God does not guide the disbelieving people. And the footnote says the sacred months, according to the corrupted Muslim world, are Rajab, Zulqa'dah, Zulhajj, and Muharram, the months of 7, 11, 12, and 1, and first month of the Islamic calendar. A careful study of the Quran, however, reveals that they should be Zulhajj, Muharram, Safar, and Rabi 1, months of 12, first, second, and third months. So it seems the sacred months are the months during one can observe Hajj, and during that four-month process, they're designated to be sacred so that one can observe and go and travel and do their obligatory Hajj pilgrimage. That's my understanding so far.
And inshallah, in the verses that were posted in VC1, Surah 9, 1-5, it makes it very clear that regardless of what some of the traditional Muslim perspective is, it's clear from Surah 9, 1-5 that the sacred months are consecutive. That's the important thing. Another important thing we see from those verses, that they're consecutive 4 months. It's not split up with 3 months and then there's a break and then another one in between, which is again another example of alternating the sacred months, but still maintaining it at 4 sacred months. But so right away you can see clearly in 9, 1-4 that it is the 4 months for Hajj are the sacred months are consecutive, starting with Zulhijjah based on how the verses are written.
MashaAllah, brother. That makes really a logical sense besides the factual, just evident. Because if you look at the month of Ramadan, it's one consecutive month month and it's not broken up into 2 weeks, for example, followed by another 2 weeks. So we know that when God institutes these things, first of all, it's to ease and make convenience and not hardship. So that 4 months that are consecutive, it actually allows people, even back in, I don't know, a couple of centuries ago, 3 centuries ago, they had to make a long journey, very difficult journey. So, thank God now we have this technology, the jetliners, but those 4 months are necessary. Well, first God instituted, and also for people to prepare themselves for this long and wonderful journey.
Excellent. Thank you for those comments. Does anyone have any information or any questions or comments? Any Quranic issues or Quranic questions, burning questions that you may have had for the week and you saved for the Quranic study session to ask? This is a perfect opportunity. Many qualified individuals here ready to, inshallah, God willing, address the questions.
I'm waiting, but I don't want to. I don't want to take. I don't want to hog the floor. So please, somebody. I've got one, but I'll wait. I just want to say, ladies and gentlemen, we have Elvis in the house. We have Elvis in the house. This is a momentous occasion. I don't know if anybody knows it, but he's a wonderful brother from New York who comes from Albania, who has a wonderful story. He shared it with us this week, but I just want to welcome him to the Quran study. And he changed his profile, his picture to Elvis, and it's so fitting because his name is actually he's actually named after Elvis, even though his name's Evis. So, alhamdulillah. Just a really, really nice brother. I recommend people getting to know him as well.
Thank you, brother. Peace, everyone.
Peace.
Peace, brother. God bless.
Peace, brother Elvis. It's a blessing to have you here. Do you have any Quranic wisdom to share with us today?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Say again?
I said, peace be upon you. It's nice to see you here today. Do you have any Quranic wisdom that you can share with us at this point in time?
On
the spot.
On the spot, yeah, that's really hard to do. Just keep on studying. The more you study, the more you will understand like this. That's my view. Every time I read, I find out that I know not much. So God opens up different paths for you to understand Him, and especially with coming together with different submitters, with groups of submitters, and studying Quran, which is incredibly helpful. That you have a better understanding with over time, I guess, and because I think God opens up His blessings for us at stages, like He says in the Quran. Like you go through stages, right? So I guess that everyone should go through these stages at one point in their life. Like moving from stage to stage, and that's what I think is important to be in these studies, or in person or like this, it's extremely important to have, different point of view to understand and grow together. So we move from stage to stage, and that would be my view on this.
That was beautiful, brother. Thank you so much. I wanted to congratulate everybody. Also, 941. I put the verse in VC1-chat. It's talking about better believers strive in the cause of God. The verse says, "You shall readily mobilize, light or heavy, and strive with your money and your lives in the cause of God. This is better for you if you only knew." And we know there's another verse. I guess some of the Turkish brothers brought this to my attention earlier. I can look it up, but maybe someone will help me. There is guidance provided to those who strive. Does anyone remember that verse? Let's see. It says, "For those who strive, we give the guidance." I can't find it right now.
39:33 is another nice verse I really like, that I enjoy. I think you should post that. Or a few verses after that too, actually.
Let's take a look. 39.
495 is also like another verse that speaks to this.
The verse that was brought was 29:69. That's exactly the verse that I was referring to. It says, "As for those who strive in our cause, we will surely guide them in our paths. Most assuredly, God is with the righteous, with the pious." So my understanding is when you strive, that it comes in a package deal. Basically, you get guidance along with it from God. So therefore, when we strive, it's very powerful. And that's why God says this is better for you if you only knew. But of course, unfortunately, most of us do not know. A couple other verses were shared. 495. This is relevant. And not equal are the sedentary among the believers who are not handicapped, and those who strive in the cause of God with their money and their lives. God exalts the strivers with their money and their lives above the sedentary. For both God promises salvation, but God exalts the strivers over the sedentary with a great recompense. 496, the higher ranks come from him, as well as forgiveness and mercy. God is forgiver, most merciful. 39:33 to 35 says, Quran absolute truth. As for those who promote the truth and believe therein, they are the righteous. They will get everything they wish at their Lord. Such is the reward for the righteous. God remits their sinful works and rewards them generously for their good works. This is actually a really good verse, actually. This is a very powerful verse in 33, because we see a lot of sectarian cults in the submission, if you will, umbrella, promoting against the promotion of God's truth. And they say that only a messenger is authorized or able or appropriate for spreading God's message. But here we see the promotion of the truth is definitely appropriate for the believers. And not only is it appropriate, these are the righteous, and these are the ones who get rewarded for the efforts. So when we promote the truth, we're striving and we're actually getting major levels of credit awarded to us. So this is a wonderful news. This is wonderful reward. 3142 says, do you expect to enter paradise without God distinguishing those among you who strive, and without distinguishing those who are steadfast? If I can just say, we've had this server for about 8 months now, and it's growing dramatically. Praise God. We're almost at 1,000 people, 962 members. We got the weekly Quran study and all the other resources available. It's been wonderful. If you can invite your friends or even your enemies, bring them here. And this is God's message being spread. This is the largest public platform for submission in the world. Nothing else comes even close by God's leave. It's just been God's support that got to this point. So we can invite everyone to the universal message of submission to God alone. Thank you.
Okay, mashallah. I'd like to bring up the topic then, and it's regarding the notion of that your job, you're supposed to obey the Quran, and the idea of the messenger. If the messenger makes a mistake, it's your job not to follow him. That's been said, and there's Quranic verses that support that. But also at the same time, it seems to be a contradiction that it says that you should obey God and you should obey the messenger, and if you obey him, you'll be guided. This kind of concept. So the rub comes in where if you don't understand something the messenger said, or it doesn't seem to be like it's in the Quran from your understanding, you could come to a conclusion that I think the messenger is wrong right there. So, and then on the other side of the argument, there's somebody who says, well, I just don't understand why it's right, but I'm sure he's not wrong. Now, so the position B, somebody might just say, well, that's advocating a divine or a infallibility. That, wow, you're just not allowing for his fallibility. And so this argument kind of gets set up in a binary discussion that either you're just following the Quran and you just follow the parts of the Quran that, like, for example, translation that you believe Dr. Khalifa was correct on, or you hear and obey, you trust it. There's verses that say trust the messenger, and you obey that. So that you have two different options. Well, I can also throw in that there's a third understanding of this, and it's that, and this comes from 2454. Say, obey God and obey the messenger. If they refuse, then he is responsible for his obligations, and you are responsible for your obligations. If you obey him, you will be guided. So Dr. Khalifa talked about this, actually. Somebody asked him specifically, and it literally his answer was that, yeah, if I'm wrong, that's my responsibility. Your job is to obey the messenger. So that gets out of this binary that you're either thinking of him as perfect, or you're second guessing everything he says. What the messenger says in this verse, what God is telling the messenger in this verse to tell us, is that obey the messenger. If he's wrong, that's on him. That's his issue. So I just want to throw that out on the table.
Thank you, Brother Jeff, for those comments. Appreciate that. I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments about the statements you just made, but they're welcome to provide any commentary on your content right now. Do you want to take a moment? Let's see. Does anyone want to comment on this topic?
Yeah, I just think it's important to remember that when we're going to trust and obey the messenger, we have to accept all of his religious teachings, not just the ones that kind of jive with us. So just an important reminder there for Jeff. Well, not for Jeff per se, but in general, a general reminder.
Yeah. Oh, mashallah. Oh, thank you. And here I would say that, okay, so here's some of the pitfalls of taking some of the positions. Like, for example,
well, not pitfalls. I'm talking about his message, like his religious teachings. We have to, if we're going to say we have to obey him, that's across the board in religious teachings. That's all I'm saying. So it's important to make sure we're not taking a chunk of teachings that, for whatever reason, we're not really taking. I'm just saying it's important if we're going to obey the messenger, which I believe it's the same way, we have to incorporate all of his religious teachings. That's all. Because if we start picking and choosing or casting aside some or trying to redefine what was like a very direct statement and redefine it to say it didn't really mean that, what some people do tend to do, right? People can fall into that, right? Because we're human.
So
I
I was going to.
I do believe.
Okay, I was just talk. Oh, what's that? Oh, so furthering the argument about these issues is some of the pitfalls that happen from an understanding. For example, if okay, so a messenger brings proof. He brings proof that he's a messenger. What's that for? I mean, why did God give Moses this ridiculously wild, magical performance for the people of Pharaoh? What was that about? Why is Jesus doing all these creating birds from clay and bringing people back from the dead? What the heck? What's the point of that? And I would say, well, the point of that is authority. It's like, whoa. I better listen to this guy. This is authority. This is something. He's saying he's a messenger of God, and he just showed some authority. Now, what's authority? What's the point of authority? Why does he bring this big sign of authority? Because there's the requirement that is an unreasonable. There's an unreasonable requirement that God is asking of us. Why do I say unreasonable, Astaghfirullah? I'm saying because it's saying hearing and obey. See, now that is unreasonable. What do you mean? I have to follow something I don't understand? This is ridiculous. However, God's saying, but wait, I just provided you with this tremendous miracle. Therefore, you should feel content. It's for your contentment, so that I know, hearing, obeying is tough, but here's this miracle, so that you will be able to hear and obey. And so that's one of the aspects. The problem of not hearing, obeying, is you run into the possibility of saying, oh, gee, I think I know better on this verse than the messenger does. I don't think he understood it correctly. This is a problem, I've been in that problem. I've walked in those shoes, and I found myself saying, I think I knew better on this one than the messenger. And then, we're supposed to be super intelligent. And I think it's very, very important to recognize that an intelligent person will know his limitations. He'll know I just said that I think I know more than God's authorized message, God's messenger. Gee, it should make you kind of quiver in your shoes a little bit. You're thinking, he's authorized. I'm just some dude. I'm using my intelligence. So I'm using my intelligence, and I'm saying, I'm weighing. Wait, there's all these verses saying there's my opinion versus God's opinion. And saying that if you follow the messenger, you're following God's opinion. It's like, okay, am I going to keep insisting and persisting on my opinion? That is the big question. And so what I'm saying is that rather than seeing it as binary, rather than saying that, gee, I don't want to see Rashad as infallible, you have guilt in the sense that God says that he's responsible for the message he's saying. Yeah. You're just responsible for obeying. If you obey him, you will be guided.
Jeff, can I just pause you for a minute? Jeff, can you hear me?
That was my crescendo.
Okay.
That was like
just a quick
mic drop.
Okay, just a quick reminder. You probably know this. You're just saying it out of habit, but every time you say G, that's actually abbreviation for Jesus. So that's a commemoration of Jesus. Just FYI.
You have to repeat. You broke up.
Okay, so
Your signal.
can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I said every time you say G is actually an abbreviation for Jesus. It's a commemoration of Jesus, who they consider Son of God.
Oh, thank you. I'll say L next time. I'll forgive me. Thank you, God.
It's okay. But I appreciate your reminder. I put something in regard to this in VC1 chat. Anyone can check. Mercy from God, 21-107. This is from Appendix 2, and I feel like it's very appropriate explanation. It's exactly in line with what's being described. When the believers are faced with a problem, they develop a number of possible solutions, and this invariably leads to considerable bickering, disunity, and disarray. We learn from 2:151, 3:164, and 21:107 that is but mercy from God that he sends to us messengers to provide the final solutions to our problems. We learn from 42:51 that God sends his messengers to communicate with us and to disseminate new information. Hence the strong injunction in 465:80 to accept without the slightest hesitation the teachings delivered to us through God's messengers. So in a concert or in line with what you said, this is a simplification process. This is a mercy from God that he provides us a mechanism, an effective system, a tool for us to resolve our issues and refer to the messenger. E53 raises the following question. Why is not there a statement as obey the prophet? I'm not sure what he means by that, but basically, if we look at 464 and 465, the verses are very powerful. If someone, I can load it. Here, I got it here. Peace be upon you, everyone who just joined. Assalamu alaikum. All right, so here we go. I'm loading this in VC1 chat. It says, unquestioning submission, quality of the true believers. We did not send any messenger except to be obeyed in accordance with God's will. Had they, when they wronged their souls, came to you and prayed to God for forgiveness, and the messenger prayed for their forgiveness, they would have found God Redeemer most merciful. Never indeed by your Lord, they are not believers unless they come to you to judge in their disputes. Then find no hesitation in their hearts whatsoever in accepting your judgment. They must submit a total submission. And Brother Iblis put the verse very appropriate, 332, proclaim, you shall obey God and the messenger. If they turn away, God does not love the disbelievers. Unfortunately, I need to head out now. Okay, never mind. That's someone else. That's Sister Jannah. Okay, so does that kind of address your point, Jeff, or do you see it a different way? Okay. Unfortunately, you're extremely robotic at this point in time. But I just wanted to say that this issue is resolved for our Quranist friends that we talk to and communicate with. Unfortunately, our Quranist friends are stuck in a perpetual cycle of confusion and lack of access to a consistent ideology. This system provides a peace of mind and solutions to our issues when it comes to religious affairs. E53 says, obey the messenger. The Quran never said obey the prophet. What's the difference? Well, it's my understanding, if I can just say briefly, that it's correct. Brother Michael Jackson just wrote all prophets are messengers, but not all messengers are prophets, and that is correct. However, it must be said that in the Quran, the Prophet, when it refers to the Prophet, Nabi is talking about when he's alive. And after he is gone, it no longer referred to him as a prophet. We can load all of the verses in the Quran that refer to the Prophet, Nabi, during his life. All of them that refer to the word Nabi are regards to the Prophet when he was alive. I could put as many that would fit on the screen right now. Let me load some of these for you. Okay. Loading it in VC1 chat. Oh, shoot. Okay. So these are most of the verses, if not all of the verses that refer to the Prophet. And the word is Nabi, and it refers to the Prophet while he was alive. Another brother asked a general question when it comes to the definition of Nabi and Rasul, Prophet and Messenger. Of course, this is a question we get on a regular basis, if not every other day. So we have a good article on this to address this issue. It addresses it once and for all and resolves the matter completely. So praise God for that. But Mike, Jeff, I wanted to check in with you and see if you're outside of a robotic voice box.
How about now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't have any. I just said that your argumentation was simply just supporting the notion of the value of valuing the teachings of Dr. Khalifa. But I think that Mike was advocating that exactly as well. The issue comes to the verification aspect of it, and for me, I think maybe a very important point is to think about your job as far as verifying a messenger is verifying whether he is a messenger. See, that's what the point of that is. You verify that he's a messenger, and then Hulus, that's it. Hulus, that means finish. That's it. You now are in the position of hearing and obeying because you've done your due diligence. Because see, a messenger is somebody who's well-founded in knowledge. Now, me self-assessing myself as somebody well-founded in knowledge is potentially dangerous. It's actually, I mean, there's a lot of hubris in that. There's possible arrogance in it. I know what I'm talking about. I mean, come on. I mean, really. So that's why our job is to verify that he is a messenger. Your job is done now in terms of your verification. It's hear and obey. And if he's wrong, don't worry about that you're saying that he's infallible. That's not even the point. Hear and obey. And if you're responsible for following the message, and he's responsible for delivering the message. So
yes,
alhamdulillah.
And I just imagine this for a moment, because as we know, Quranists, for the most part, their dogma is that they'll listen to anybody's sermon or speeches or talks on a Quranic topic except someone who's a messenger of God. So I just want to make that clarity here. Quranists will do everything to find him wrong, simply because they want to avoid accepting another messenger, which we see is a common problem throughout the Quran. Oh, this is the last messenger for whoever they happen to accept. But for submitters, when I want you just to imagine a big circle that encompasses all of Dr. Khalifa's religious teachings for a moment, okay? Now just say you've got every religious teaching, audio, video written that we have from him that is a religious teaching about our deen, okay? Now imagine a little portion of that, maybe about 20%, just notch out a little part of those teachings, where those teachings are about a particular aspect of the faith. Now, in those particular aspects of the faith, if you cut that out, that part of the circle of all the teachings, cut that out and just don't even consider that, then that would be a problem. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. That's what I wanted to make sure I heard. We were on the same page here. So, when we have a series of teachings from the messenger on a particular topic, more than one, but on the same topic. Like we see that, for example, the dietary laws, he talked many times about it in various locations, but that's just as an example. So you have a topic, and those teachings, which we do find in the Quran, by the way, so he references the Quran, so we know they're legitimate teachings, obviously. And we would trust him anyways. We would assume he has a reason for what he's saying. But in those, say, a little over 20, roughly, don't quote me the exact number, and he says something like this, and I'm going to read a quote from him, and this is my concern, that we have to accept all of his teachings, and we have to understand all the teachings in light of what we know. And here's a quote from him. This is from December 28th, 1989 Quran study number 39, if you want to hear it. Okay, and I believe it's at roughly I think it's 57-minute mark. I'll have to get the number for you later, but I'm going to read you the quote, okay? And then I'll read a second one. And my question to you is, this is a religious teaching from the messenger, so my question is, how do we incorporate this when it comes to the messenger's teachings? It's a how question, and I would like you to be able to answer if you don't mind. And here's the quote. Quote, from the messenger, the criterion of obeying the messenger is that whatever he says must be in the Quran and be backed up by what God is saying. If it is not in the Quran, it is your obligation to disobey him. Actually, it's the same, in the same surah, it says that. So the reason when God says, quote, obey God and his messenger is because the messenger conveys the word of God, end quote, Rashad Khalifa, December 28th, 1989. So my question to you is, how do you incorporate something like that, which is a religious teaching having to do with his teachings? How do you incorporate that if you're going to obey him in all of his teaching? That's my question. If you can articulate the methodology.
Can I address this, Jeff, before you do?
Well, sure. I literally have the second half of that discussion.
Okay.
Oh, I know the second half. I know the second half, right? I know it. And you're saying that's if he's wrong, then we'll just accept what he says is wrong. But yet, right before that, he's saying it's your obligation to disobey him. So these are contradictory teachings. Which one do we accept? Which do we accept?
Wait a minute. I just want to say something that I think overrides all of this.
I'm sure you will, but I don't know how you can override our teaching from a messenger telling you to verify in the Quran. But I'd like to hear your point.
Okay. The overriding is when he tells you it's in the Quran. That's the end of it.
Okay, but if he's telling you it's not in the Quran, you have to disobey him.
But
if it's not in the Quran, you disobey him.
Right, but hold on. But if he's hold on. But if he's telling you it's in the Quran, then you have to believe him. Because he cannot lie about that.
I'm going to read the quote to you again. And that's not what he said. Thank you. That's not what he said. He said, in fact, if it is not in the Quran, it is your obligation to disobey him. Disobey what? What he just said. It is not in the Quran.
But if he's telling you it's in the Quran, then it is.
No. Hear me out for a second. That's not what this is saying, and that's not what a lot of about 20-some-odd teachings is what he's saying, okay? That's not. I'm sorry. I'm reading it to you again. If he says anything that's not in the Quran, he said it's your opportunity to disobey him. So my question becomes, if you're disobeying him, it means he said something if it's not in the Quran.
Which is saying, is it audio? Which audio is this?
You're trying to tell me
that
he is going to be aware if he has an this understanding is wrong. I'm just going to let you know in advance.
Go ahead.
Come on, man. What you verify with the Quran?
Which audio is this?
It's
Jeff will tell you, because there's a second part where it says another opposite thing right after. So you have two religious teachings on the same issue.
No, I think yes. No.
39.
What's that?
39.
Audio 39?
Okay. Yeah, the thing is, he said this in multiple places, as Mike said.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Yeah, it's...
What minute?
Okay.
What minute is this?
What?
What minute is this statement?
What? It was wiggly.
You're saying it's audio 39, and I'm asking what?
I'm on my phone. I don't have it in front of me, but the link.
Oh, I just printed it out just to have this argumentation. I'm not in front of it either. I just printed it out just...
Jeff is right. Jeff is right. There are many instances of the Dr. Khalifa pointing out, articulating to us what we're supposed to do in such a situation. So he's correct.
I do not disregard. I do not say that he did not say that, and I'm not even ignoring it. I'll just tell you my understanding.
But if you uphold that and you verify in the Quran, and if you say, then you're saying that you're disobeying the messenger. So there is a contradictory concept with application here.
Maybe. So that's a maybe. Okay, maybe. So here's what I'd say, because we can just look at this on a continuum. So if I'm talking to a strict Quranist, somebody who's even redefining the names of the words. When Dr. Khalifa says follow the Quran, the whole Quran and nothing but the Quran, he says that multiple times. And this is a statement that Quranists have taken to understand that's it. It's clear. I mean, everything beyond any understanding of listen to a messenger's, that clearly is contradictory. So that's one level of it. I'm looking at a continuum here.
So on that continuum, so yeah, I'm envisioning a long line here on your continuum. Yeah. So the Quranists take that teaching, which was probably about 1988, I think. I believe that was great debate, as well as in the Quran, Hadith, and Islam book, which was